Hi, this is Jordan Ramirez, and normally I host my podcast show, Film Talk with Jordan Ramirez. Now I am hosting a special show for my podcast, Film Talk with Jordan Ramirez, Minisode Jordan Ramirez Recommends. The minisodes are now airing every Monday at 12 p.m. as part of the Film Talk with Jordan Ramirez podcast. So, without further ado, you are listening to a Film Talk with Jordan Ramirez minisode. My recommended film is the recently nominated Polish film EO from 2022, directed by Jerzy Skolimowski, starring Sandra Derszamowska, Lorenzo Zerzolo, and Isabelle Huppert. EO, a donkey that previously worked at a circus, is now being repossessed and taken from one owner to another. The only friend whom EO has been with since the very beginning and feels unharmed is Magda, played by Sandra Derszamowska, a circus performer who has been with EO from the very beginning before he was repossessed. She is seen again one more time when he is taken to another owner, this time a petting zoo. It is an episodic feature told from the animal's perspective, done by the amazing but sometimes disorienting cinematography of Minisode. With the strobing light effect done in a red color, it can be somewhat irritating to the eyes, but it's effective for the purpose of the story. I am also in awe of the use of the fisheye lens perspective to give a disorienting and out-of-focus feel when you are watching from the donkey's perspective. When you watch the donkey up close, it is done in a handheld cinema verite style. The characters in the story are hard to keep track of since the characters in the story are of little importance, with the exception of Magda, who was very close to EO. While the other characters are not that memorable, EO, on the other hand, is the only character whom the audience sympathizes with. The film also has a nightmarish quality that feels surreal and otherworldly. One example is when EO wanders in the forest, there are a few shots of a wolf howling, an owl screeching, and a spider spinning on its own web, before we see various green lights that turn out to be from game hunters as they are hunting in the forest. EO then walks over to the dead wolf that has been shot and the blood coming out of its wound. Another scene takes place when EO is in a building where the furrier snaps the necks of the foxes from their cages, but it only happens off screen. The film is inspired by Robert Bresson's Au Hazard Balthazar, released in 1966. Skolimowski in his younger days described himself as a young, arrogant filmmaker who looked at films in a semi-professional and cynical way, only to look at camera angles, tracking shots, etc., and not becoming involved in emotions or stories as much. But in an interview that Skolimowski gave earlier this year, he said, quote, "But somewhere during the screening of Au Hazard Balthazar, I lost that semi-professional, cynical way of watching films, and after its final shot, when the lights went up and the film finished, I found myself with tears in my eyes," end quote. Regarding the narrative structure of this film, Skolimowski wanted to avoid the three-act structure from Bresson's film and instead wanted to make a bolder and more experimental film that would be something new and different. Quote, "If we created the animal character as the leading character of EO, it could help move away from this traditional narration. A lot of dialogue was stripped out. I'm not a great admirer of dialogues in films. Eventually we started shooting EO and observed that the most significant moments of the film were from the donkey's point of view." End quote. The main takeaway from EO that Skolimowski wanted the audience to know was how animals are mistreated in industrial farming and how they live in these terrible conditions. He mentioned in the interview that he wanted to shake the audience to its core about the horrors of what happens to these animals. And he said, quote, "During production, Iwa Piaskowska, the co-writer of EO, and I subconsciously reduced our meat consumption, and so did a lot of the crew. I hope some part of the audience will do the same. Maybe one day industrial farming will become illegal and cease completely. This would be the greatest thing EO could achieve." One of my favorite reviews from this film came from John Waters' Art Forum column from late last year. Quote, "Another tribute film, this time Bresson's Au Hazard Balthazar meets Old Yeller. Can a donkey remember? Just ask Isabelle Huppert, who pops up in this movie for no apparent reason except that she's the best actress in the world," end quote. While the plot structure may make me feel a little bit lost, I do admire the director's comment on the mistreatment of animals and the harms of industrial farming. I also admire Minisode cinematography that feels surreal and amazing visually as part of the story. The 6 donkeys who portray the role of EO, Ettore, Hola, Marietta, Mela, Rocco, and Taco were the real stars of this feature. This film is now available to watch on the Criterion channel if you have not seen it. It is also nominated for the category of Best International Feature Film at the 2023 Academy Awards, and I highly recommend this film. On the next episode of Film Talk with Jorge Ramirez, Nicolas Cage plays a truffle hunter who is looking for his foraging pig, and Cage notices that the past that he tries to distance himself from comes back to haunt him. Join me for the Film Talk with Jorge Ramirez episode on Pig from 2021. Coming this Friday at 4 p.m. only on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Radio Public. This has been a Film Talk with Jorge Ramirez Minisode. Tune into the Minisodes every Monday at 12 p.m. and Film Talk with Jorge Ramirez every Friday at 4 p.m. on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Radio Public. If you are on Spotify, make sure to like and subscribe to keep this show going, and make sure to recommend to your friends and family members to tune in to this podcast. And if you have a film that you want to recommend, contact me on my LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Letterboxd profiles to let me know. And until then, I'll see you at the movies.